Ever. Okay, so happy fiscal 26. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time today. My name is Pilar Mejia. I am a staff ecosystem manager supporting the US public sector team. But when I'm not doing that, I also have the distinct privilege of being one of the co-founders and current lead of our Gente TMRG here at GitLab. And so we spun up this career growth sequence, if you will, last year because we were basically looking for some answers, as we all are, on our journey here at GitLab. And we're having conversations around the virtual office. And today we're talking about internal mobility, which is super fun because that's kind of where this all started on our quest to figure out how do we grow our careers here at GitLab. And we have a couple of really cool stories that I'm excited to get into. But before that, I did want to just draw everyone's attention to the note stock. If you've missed any of our previous career growth sessions, you can check them out there. As I said, we're going through our resources, and those resources include the TMRGs. So a big shout out to our Black at GitLab TMRG. As you all know, February is Black History Month here in the US. So we've got our background. The DIB team has put together a fantastic issue giving you all the links that you could possibly desire to help celebrate around our virtual office, including our Zoom backgrounds. They have a great session coming up next week around career growth as well, and you can catch them at their Slack, Black at GitLab. So a big thank you to them for collaborating with us this year and helping us pick the topic of internal mobility. So that being said, I'm sure folks have questions. You are welcome to drop them in our AMA number 8 on the note stock, and we will get to them just as soon as we can, and we can always async it if we run out of time. This is an interactive session. We want to make sure that you all are getting as much out of it as we are. So, with all that being said, I would like to introduce my wonderful co-host, the amazing Juliana Jesse. Hi, Juliana.
Hi, Pilar. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Juliana. I've been at GitLab for about as long as Pilar, I think, a few years. I'm a people business partner, supporting security, product, and for a few months, finance as well. Excited to be here with everyone and a co-host for Gente, a co-lead for Gente. So excited to introduce the true stars of today's show. Betsy, do you want to kick off with an intro?
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm Betsy. I am a senior brand manager on the brand and creative team, which is within marketing. Um, I've been at GitLab for 6 years this month, which is crazy. It feels like yesterday. And I've been in three different roles now at GitLab, so we'll talk about that as we go forward in this conversation. Um, what else? I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, with my husband and a 2-year-old daughter and a golden retriever who may make an appearance on this call. Yeah, so I'm excited to talk more about my journey at GitLab today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Betsy. Fingers crossed for the golden appearance. We love those. Chris, do you want to do a quick intro as well?
Sure. Chris Maurer. I'm currently account executive in the public sector. I get to work with Pilar all the time, which is amazing. I've also had three different roles within the company. Again, like Betsy, we'll be talking about that a little bit later. My living situation is very weird at the moment. I kind of split time between Denver, where my family lives, and the DC area where my work is. So I'm constantly kind of going back and forth at the moment. But um, did I cover all of that? I don't know. I've been here for 7 years, a little over 7 years. But as Betsy said, it's been a weird blur and both feels like it was yesterday and a million years ago. So um, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. So.
6 years and 7 years. That is very long, especially in like GitLab years. Y'all have really seen the full end-to-end evolution of the business. Okay, well, today's topic is internal mobility, as Pilar mentioned. So we have Betsy and Chris who've been here for a very long time and have had different roles. I guess we'd love to hear just kind of about your journey, which areas of the business you've worked in, and kind of what led you to pursue the internal mobility that you've pursued.
I'm happy to get started and pass it to you, Chris. Okay. So let's see. I started at GitLab in the beginning of 2019. I think we were probably like close to 400 people, which again at the time felt big for GitLab. And I was part of the recruiting team. So I was the first person that was hired to focus on building out a talent brand program within recruiting. And so it was a really cool role for me because I had come from a larger tech company where we had a big team of people doing talent brand, or some people call it employer brand. And so it was such a cool experience to be able to like go to a smaller company and help build that kind of program. Um, so we were hiring a ton at the time. It was a really exciting time to join GitLab. And I was in that role for about 2 years and really loved it. So that was when my next role came up, I was in a great place with that current role. So it was just kind of an interesting, I'll get to kind of the context there later on, but when I had a lot of connections with and worked really closely with people really like across GitLab in that role, which was wonderful because I felt like I had a kind of an awareness of all the different teams and different opportunities for my career to kind of grow or change as I continued on at GitLab. And one of those opportunities was actually a team that sort of spun up during really the height of COVID. And I shifted over into marketing in my second role at GitLab, which was part of the all remote marketing team. So if anyone was at GitLab during that time period, I'm sure you would remember Darren Murph, who led that team and was kind of our fearless leader on all things all remote. So that was a really cool team to join, especially at that time, because it was just an exciting um, storytelling role. And it involved really just doing a lot of kind of evangelizing the things that GitLab is really good at doing, and how we set up our company and all of those different aspects. So I really, that was a role that came up and I just couldn't say no to it. And it was an exciting move that was something I did not expect in my career. So, after being in that role for probably a year and a half, I believe, I had an opportunity to move on to the brand team within marketing. So that was a move that was just within the same department. And that role I've been in for about a year and a half, or sorry, 2.5 years. And so it's been really cool to watch that team grow as well. When I started, there were several people that were doing that work that have since left GitLab. And so I kind of came in at a time that the team was changing and growing. And so I felt like I got to like kind of start fresh with them. And we've really been able to do a lot of great things with our brand. So that's where I am today. And it's been just kind of a journey of saying yes to things along the way. So I'll pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, sure. So I was originally hired to be the first public sector solutions architect, and this was back in 2017, September 11th of 2017. Ironically enough, for public sector, that has, I mean, it has meaningful date for everybody, but they were expanding the public sector team because we were getting into the federal business, and they needed someone like me. And about a year later, roughly a year, maybe a year and a couple months later, they wanted to continue to grow the team, and I was tabbed to build it. So I was promoted into a manager role. And during the course of 2019, I think I hired 16 people, something like that. And I had somewhere around 19 direct reports. I inherited a couple people that we had hired, which was completely insane. If you ever have that many direct reports, that I would suggest against that. um, and then, we build out of the management layer on top of that. And then last year, our account executive for the U.S. intelligence community, Mark Kriz, probably many of you have heard that name or met him, decided to leave GitLab, and I looked at it as a possible opportunity for learning something new. And so I stayed within public sector sales my entire career here. Unlike Betsy, I didn't switch across different disciplines, but the work motion between being an SA, being an SA manager, and being an AE is so completely different that it was like I'm, starting fresh in a new job completely. And um, I took it as an opportunity to learn and learn that side of the business, and the leadership within public sector was encouraging for me to do that. And I built as Betsy said, you build the trust within your team, and that can lead to good things, right? So like you build the trust within your team, with your leaders, and you will be given other opportunities. I think that's one of the things that I kind of took away from that experience. So
Thank you both so much for sharing. Super interesting how it sounds like the foundation of what enabled you to transition is similar. And there's a lot of overlaps, but you're in different areas of the business and have done very different things. So, two things that I heard from both of you as kind of being fundamental to facilitating the mobility you've had here is saying yes to new opportunities and being open, and the importance of cultivating those professional relationships internally. Is there anything else that stands out to either of you when you're thinking of your own mobility in the business that you say is really important to others on the call who may be interested in transitions?
I'd say being adaptable, I guess, like within the essay world, it's the Audible ready, that if there's any essays on here, being able to shift gears kind of in a quick way when you're on a sales call, but like kind of taking that into who you are as a person, like being able to adapt to the environment that you're in. And I think I wore a bunch of different hats even as an SA leader here. I'm still technically the facility security officer for the public sector, which is a whole other role that I'm trying to actually move off of my plate at the moment. But um, just being able to adapt to the changes that happen. And I think that the longevity that I've had here, I think is also a part of that, right? Is like you had mentioned earlier, that the company has changed so significantly over the last 7 years that I've been here. It, some people, there have been a lot of people that have left because of that change, but I think being adaptable to the environment is important. So sorry, I talked a lot there, Betsy. Sorry.
No, I was actually just going to add to what you said, which is that, like, yeah, seeing those changes and the company's growth as like something that presents opportunities to you in your career. Because I know that there are teams, like I think about in my example, the all remote marketing team did not exist when I started at GitLab, and it grew because of the company's growth and our brand in that world. So it's yeah, like staying adaptable and open-minded, I think, to opportunities as they come up has been really important for me.
Amazing. Thank you both. Something certainly transferable from a mentality perspective to all functions and roles of the company. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I think something you both have in common as well as I'm listening is it sounds like you did a really great job just building your brand, being someone that folks could go to for their expertise, being someone that executed on what they had in front of them so that when opportunities did come up, being sort of top of mind because of those internal connections and that work you were doing. So that's a very cool thing to see. So I'm in distribution. My mind always goes to logistics operations. How do we actually execute against the things we need to do? I would love to understand for those folks that maybe are thinking of making a move, maybe have their eye on something they've either heard about or seen in Workday. What were some of the first steps you took to get started when you were getting ready to change roles? And then also, it's a two-part question. I love a two-part question. How did you know you wanted a different opportunity?
You want to go first, Betsy?
Yes, Chris, you start.
Oh no. So I think the first thing that I did was really kind of level set with my leadership to understand to make sure that I was not doing something that I shouldn't be doing. Like if it was if I talked to my boss and I said, Jordan, is this could you see me doing this role? And he'd say no. Like there would have been a second thought in my head, kind of going into that. So like it was discussing it with my leadership, who my new my new manager was, whether or not they thought it was a reasonable thing for me to move into. That was kind of my starting point. And then, I had kind of internal discussions with the team that I was managing at the time, just kind of to bounce ideas off of them too. It was those kind of conversations. And then from, what started me thinking about a role change, part of it was I was ready for a change and I didn't want to leave GitLab. And I was ready for uh, to learn something new. And there wasn't much opportunity to move into a higher level role within the organization I was in. Um, and it this the AE role kind of gave me a new perspective on the sales, motion. So I wanted to get that opportunity to do that. Um, anyway, that's where I came from. So
Yeah, so somewhat similar for me. I was it really in both cases happy in my role. But I think I also like when I heard about these other roles opening, realize like, ooh, that interests me, and I am now wanting to learn something new. So I think I was not in a position where I was like, actively looking in that sense, like feeling like, okay, I've got to really make a move. So actually, that was kind of one of the reasons it felt challenging because I was like, wait, am I making the wrong decision because I am comfortable in this current role? Should I be making a move now? So that some of those challenges come up when you're just sort of like processing whether it's the right move. And that's another thing I thought was interesting about some of the first steps is just that it's so different from, interviewing for an external role. You are usually applying or getting referred, and you have very little ability to kind of like gather information in a conversation prior to the actual interview process. Whereas with an internal role, there's a lot more opportunity to kind of like have coffee chats and conversations with people that are on that team or in that type of role, or even with the hiring manager, and kind of get a better idea before you even go through the formal process of whether it's like the pieces are right for you. And so I that was really my first step was to really like Chris said, obviously have an open conversation and be transparent with your current leadership to not, make sure that doesn't become a difficult situation for everybody involved. But also after having that conversation, have a conversation with the team that you're interested in, because like being able to build those relationships and really understand that prior to going through the interview process, I think is a benefit of an internal move too. And being able to understand if that's the right next step for you. Um, so yeah, that's another piece where that kind of internal relationship building is so important to kind of lay the foundation either way, even if there's not an active role open.
Yeah, and I love your call out on the coffee chat, right? I think that was one of the first things that drew my attention as part of my onboarding issue a little over 5 years ago. I was like, wait, I can just reach out to folks and talk to them and ask them questions. And it's led to a lot of really great partnering opportunities and growth. And it's not anything super formal or like daunting. Like, yes, I love that. You have a question, ask it. That also speaks tremendously to our transparency value, which is another part of the reason why I so enjoy working here with all these wonderful GitLab team members. So thank you so much for sharing that. Those are great call outs. I know we have a couple more questions to get through and we're running short on time. So Juliana, I'm gonna pass it back to you, my friend.
Thank you. So y'all have painted pictures of kind of the journey, what's helped you along the way, and kind of highlights, I guess I would say, like what you did to make sure that it was successful. But like most processes, there are challenges sometimes. So I'm wondering if, as you've navigated these different transitions within GitLab, if you've come across challenges in the process that maybe the rest of us could learn from.
I didn't have any significant challenges. I mean, most of the challenges were kind of internal, like imposter syndrome type thing, not feeling like I knew what I was doing and those kind of things. But from a process within GitLab, I didn't have any significant challenges at all. It was fairly simple transition. Um, I'm a year into it. I still feel like I'm learning, but that's a whole other thing. So,
Yes, what you mentioned imposter syndrome, I think that's something, frankly, that I know I struggle with. I think a lot of people in general struggle with. What helped you overcome that throughout the process? Moving into a new space, I imagine, can really peak that.
honestly, closing the first deal that I had, I mean, it was like, oh, I can do this, like I mean, it came like a month after I had started, and I was like, oh, this is nice. I can manage it. But also, just learn, continuing to learn, what the role entailed, and until you actually get into a role, sometimes like you don't know what is going to actually like be the things that you need to do on a daily basis to like get success, and I think it was just learning those things that make a successful AE that, for me was the biggest kind of challenge, I guess. And yeah, Betsy.
Yeah, gosh, challenges. I like what you said about imposter syndrome, Chris, because that's definitely like for me moving into a completely different role. Definitely had some of that. And I think like reminding myself too that I had the foundation of the understanding of GitLab and how we like function and our brand and all of those things that like even though I may not have had on paper every single item on the job description, like you do have that foundational element that somebody coming from outside of GitLab may not have. So you kind of have to just like, um, you know, remind yourself that you do have a lot of that knowledge and that you're ready to learn and can learn the things that you don't quite have yet on the job. So just a little bit of a mindset shift, I think, from if you were applying from outside of a company. Um, Challenge wise, I don't know that I had any challenges either. I think one thing that kind of adds a layer of like complexity, I guess you could say, with an internal role is just that there are internal, like, you have these working relationships with people. And so if you decide that the role is not the right fit for you after interviewing, or they decide that you're not the right fit, or however it shakes out, my concern was like, oh, I'm still working with these people after this process. So I want to make sure that I'm tactful and thoughtful in that, like navigating that whole process so that those working relationships are continue to be in a great place, whether or not the role works out. That was really important to me. So I think that might have added maybe a layer of like of worry or stress in the process, but ultimately, like I truly everyone at GitLab, just like we've all experienced, is so friendly and open to having these kind of conversations. And so it was something I stressed about and didn't really need to in the end. But that's really the only challenge I could call out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I also add, sorry, I also add to Betsy sprung an idea on me as well, just that or made me remember, just leaning on the team,
Yeah.
the group of people that I get to work with in the public sector is they're amazing people. Like I feel like I can reach out to any of them if I don't know how to do something it's easy to lean on them to teach me, and I still find that I have to do that sometimes. And, vice versa. People have come to me now, asking me questions of how I did specific things. So it's the amazing people here have made the transition so much easier too. So
Yeah,
Amazing. Oh, go ahead, Pilar.
I was just gonna say, I love all these stories of internal support and communication. I do want to call out some of the great chatter happening in the Zoom as well. I know for me, some of the challenges around navigating career growth here were around where do I go? Where do I get the information? Sometimes it's not very clear. I think everyone here has been really good about communicating with their manager, right? So I would call out like put it on your one-on-one with your manager. If you're looking to make a move, we just are finishing up our performance review or kicking off our performance review cycle, right? We talked about it that last month. Make sure you're having the conversation and make sure you're putting out the feelers out, the coffee chats. Some of our organization are a little more mature than others. For me, I set up a coffee chat with our people business partner because I couldn't figure out what the next step was. I didn't know that above senior was staff, right? So just having that conversation even, just making sure you're transparent and asking some questions is a great way if you're kind of stuck and you're not understanding. And maybe even it's like, well, why didn't I get to that next level? Set up a coffee chat with someone, have them give you some perspective. Talk to your manager openly about what does it take, or what your goals are. So I did want to call that out real quickly. I know we're technically over our short meeting time, but Betsy, Chris, if you don't mind hanging out for another second, I'm happy to hang till the bottom of the hour. Okay, we've got a green light. Wonderful. Real quick, abridged, because we do have a great AMA question in here I want to make sure we get to as well. Something we like to ask all our guests is just what's the best piece of career advice you've gotten?
I will just say, like, I think this ties in really well with like the idea of making a move internally, which is that to like not be afraid to take a leap of faith and bet on yourself, because I think that's something it can be easy when you're, especially if you're pretty comfortable in a role, to just kind of be like, okay, why would I make a change? And so like one of the things that stuck with me when I was deciding whether or not to pursue an internal role was like every time that I've had growth in my career, it's because I've said yes to something, usually something that scares me a little bit. And so as someone who is a major planner and pretty type A, I usually like to like follow a plan. And so things that kind of work outside of that plan, I tend to have like an initial reaction against. So I've been really trying to work on kind of following that advice of like keep saying yes, and betting on yourself, and allowing yourself to like at least pursue those opportunities, even if it's not the right next step. It might lead you to the right next step.
Yeah, very similar to what Betsy said is, push your own boundaries, push yourself to step out of your comfort zone, and the things that I've done in my career have definitely been in that path is like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna try it. It's it's scary and it's uncomfortable at times, and you have a lot of imposter syndrome sometimes, and you work through it, I think that's one of the things that I've gotten advice from. So
That's great. Thank you both so much. Moving on to our AMA. Sean, I see you dropped a question in here. I'm not sure if you're on the call, but would you want to verbalize it?
Yes, with pleasure. I see it's been answered, but I'm very happy to verbalise it, Pillar. And thank you for setting this up. Thank you, Betsy and Chris, also for your really interesting responses. So I have a team member who is an engineer and comes from an engineering background, who is actually a great engineer, by the way. But he is interested in moving into a product management role, if at all possible. And I was wondering what possible pathways there might be for that, because we're quite clear about moving from engineering IC to engineering EM, but I wasn't aware we had a pathway for PM, and it seems like we have something there. So that's really great to see. But that was my question.
Yeah, Sean, thank you for asking. We do have an internship program for product management outline that I've linked. And I shared a couple of names of team members who've moved internally from other divisions into product management successfully through participation in the program. So the first step for the engineer I'd recommend would be to identify a mentor in the PM organization to kind of learn more about the space, any recommended courses, et cetera, opportunities to shadow or intern, and go from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Juliana. I really appreciate that. I'm going to look at this page and share it with the team member. It's really awesome.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the question, Sean. Um, as we're wrapping up, a big thank you again to everyone, to the Black at TMRG, TMRG, Black at TMRG, Black at GitLab TMRG for helping us brainstorm this session. Please check them out next week. They have a great session with David DeSanto on the 27th. You can head over to their Slack channel for more details. If you missed any of our previous ones, Justin Ferris, Eliran, they have great internal mobility stories as well. You can find them on our career growth playlist. Join our Google group if you want to make sure it's on your calendar. And next month, we are looking forward to teaming with our women's TMRG, and I'm thinking mentorship might be what we talk about. But if you have suggestions, suggestion boxes there as well. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Juliana. Have an incredible rest of your day, everyone.
For having us. Bye.
Take care.